Hi, everyone. Welcome to Waste 360's Nothing Wasted podcast. On every episode, we invite the most interesting people in waste, recycling, and organics to sit down with us and chat candidly about their thoughts, their work, this unique industry, and so much more. So thanks for listening and enjoy this episode. Hi, everyone. This is Liz Bothwell from Waste 360 with Adam Lindquist and John Kellett. They're the masterminds behind Baltimore's beloved Mr. Trash Wheel. Welcome, Adam and John, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
So I'll start with you, John. Can you please introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit more about the Mr. Trash Wheel and his origin story?
Sure. My name is John Kellett, and my background was that I worked on Baltimore Harbor for about 20 years in a variety of capacity. I was the director of the Baltimore Maritime Museum, and on a daily basis, I was confronted with the fact that the Baltimore Harbor was deeply impacted, negatively impacted by the trash that was coming down the rivers and the storm drains and entering the harbor, and the perception of the visitors to the harbor and even people who lived there that the harbor was disgusting because of the amount of trash that was in it, and it was incredibly polluted. And so every day I would see the problem firsthand, and I even called the city and said, we really need to do something about the fact that trash is the first impression of our beautiful harbor. And the city said, well, we're open to ideas. So every day when I saw the problem and crossed the main river that flows into the inner harbor, and particularly when it was raining, you can see the flow of trash just dumping into the harbor and making it look terrible. And I thought about it every day, and finally I came up with the idea of a water wheel powered trash interceptor that would pick up the trash before it scattered around the harbor and would stop it at the mouth of the river and pick it up, and we'd get rid of it right before it before it spent a long time lingering in the harbor and being an eyesore and a hazard for a detriment to the environment. So I just I came up with it at Christmas time, and I went to a Christmas party, and I sketched the idea on a cocktail napkin, and from there I built a little working model and invited city officials down to see it. And the city was like, well, it's an interesting idea, but it's never been tried before. We don't feel like we can fund an experiment. So I went to a local nonprofit foundation or a local philanthropic foundation and showed them my concept, and they agreed to finance the prototype. And we built a prototype which was tested for 8 months, and it was pretty successful, but the learning curve was pretty steep. We realized that, for the amount of trash that was coming down that river and entering the harbor, we really needed a bigger, stronger, faster machine as the permanent installation. And the Waterfront Partnership, which Adam and the Healthy Harbor Initiative, which Adam helps run, realized that the potential of the water wheel powered trash interceptor and got behind it and helped us go from prototype to the permanent installation, which has become known as Mr. Trash Wheel, and it's been very successful since it was installed in May of 2014. So 6 years ago.
I love that it was born on a cocktail napkin. That's fantastic. And then Adam, can you tell us your background and your role in this?
Sure. My name is Adam Lindquist. I'm the director of the Healthy Harbor Initiative at a nonprofit called the Waterfront Partnership of Baltimore. Back before this project started, I was studying environmental planning and was really interested in watershed issues. That is, of course, the concept that all waterways are connected to the land by watersheds, which means that basically everything that ends up on the ground, wherever you are, drains into streams, which flow into rivers, and so all that pollution kind of bottlenecks in our waterways. And I started working for Waterfront Partnership back in 2011, and they had set this goal of making the harbor safe for swimming and fishing by the year 2020. And I got hired to really find new innovative ways to implement projects that were going to help us reach that goal. Because I think one of the things that Waterfront Partnership was trying to accomplish by saying they gave themselves 10 years to clean up Baltimore Harbor, was they really wanted to try new things. They really understood that the status quo wasn't going to cut it. So we were always looking for new technologies and new ways to get the residents of Baltimore engaged in the restoration of their waterways. So we did floating wetlands, we did oyster gardens, and then along came John with this really innovative trash wheel project, which he had piloted, that kind of cocktail napkin version. He had piloted in 2008, and my organization, which really focuses on the waterfront of Baltimore and making sure that the waterfront is clean, safe, and accessible, we immediately saw the difference that first pilot trash wheel was making in the Baltimore Harbor. So very early on in the Healthy Harbor Initiative, we reached out to John and said, hey, we want to help find a way to fund the bigger, better, permanent trash wheel device.
Amazing. What a good collaboration. So can you guys tell our audience a little bit about how it's powered? I've seen solar panels. I see the wheels. Can you talk a little bit about that part?
Sure. The trash wheel works on all renewable energy. The water wheel is its engine, really, and it gets its power from two sources. When the river's flowing, the current in the river turns the water wheel, which provides mechanical power to the conveyor and the rakes, and that's the power that lifts the trash, pushes the trash up onto the conveyor, and the conveyor then lifts the trash out of the water and into a dumpster. Now, a lot of the time, the flow of the river isn't sufficient to provide enough power to lift to collect the trash quick enough to get it up out of the water. So, and sometimes, the current, because we're in a tidal location, the flow is almost negligible. So we supplement the power of the flow of the river by pumping water with solar-powered electric pumps. So we have solar panels on the machine. The panels charge batteries. The batteries, in turn, power pumps. And the pumps lift water from the river up into the buckets of the water wheel, and the water wheel uses the weight of the water to turn the wheel and then provide mechanical power to the machine. And that then the nice thing about that is the flow of the river is always helping the solar pump, helping the pump water to turn, and it also acts as its own sort of transmission. If there's a heavy log on the conveyor, it just needs a little more pumped water to turn it. The electric motor doesn't experience any more strain than if it's just 10 styrofoam cups on the conveyor. They just pump more, just the buckets of the wheel fill with more water, and the wheel turns a little more slowly, but has incredible power to lift whatever's on the conveyor up out of the water and into the dumpster.
Yeah, it's an incredibly, to your credit, John, it's an incredibly simple but effective design. I think there could be a lot of tendency to over-design something like this, but Mr. Trash Wheel is pretty simple, and I think you said before that a kid could look at this and be like, well, I could have come up with that. And in some way, that simplicity is a big part of why it has worked so well for going on 6 years now.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of both its durability, and we've had very little, almost zero downtime with the machine because it's so simple, and it's built out of durable materials, and it doesn't have a lot of complicated components to to go wrong. And the other thing it is, like Adams mentioned, is I think it's a big part of it's attraction. People, stand on the promenade and you see their hands moving in a circle, and then wave their hand in a way that demonstrates that the trash goes up the conveyor and dumps in the dumpster. And I think people get it without, most people don't. Most technology that comes out today is, kind of mysterious to people. Very few people know what's inside their cell phone and how that works. But with the trash wheel, they can see it, and I think that adds to the sort of the fact that it's become a inspiration to people to become part of the solution to the problem.
And John, just to interject for a moment, you mentioned the promenade. I think it's important to set the scene for anyone who doesn't know that Mr. Trash Wheel is located in the inner harbor of Baltimore. It's a prominent tourist destination for the region. The promenade sees like 10 million visitors every year. So there's a lot of eyes on this device. So it was certainly important when designing it that it look really good and that it fit into kind of the aesthetic of the inner harbor of Baltimore.
Absolutely, and it is eye-catching. And so, success breeds more success. So how many Mr. Trash Wheels do we have now?
Well, there's only one Mr. Trash Wheel. It's been it's been joined by Professor Trash Wheel and Captain Trash Wheel, and it's going to be added to a yet to be named trash wheel, a fourth one in the Baltimore Harbor, and in Panama, the one that we're working on is going to be called Doña Rueda, which means Madam Wheel. And
I hadn't heard that yet. That's great.
So each one has its own personality, and each one has its own location that it works in, and I think the personalities kind of work with the location. And the one they're talking about for Oakland, California, is going to be called Trasherella and be kind of a drag queen trash wheel. So it fits with San Francisco's Bay personality, I guess.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I want to get into the personalities of each of them, but before I do, can you tell us a little bit about how much trash you've saved from going into the harbor?
Sure. We try to keep very good track of what the trash wheels are picking up, and that helps us in a number of ways. It helps us understand the problem from a sort of scientific stance. It also helps, and I'll let Adam speak to this a little bit, it helps when we're advocating for behavior and policy changes, legislative changes, to know, what's coming down the river and understand the scope of the problem so that we can advocate for changing certain behaviors. And we've picked up millions and millions of cigarette butts. I think we're up to near 13 million cigarette butts, and that was used by the state as a anti-smoking litter campaign. They, talked about how many times up and down the bay those cigarette butts would reach if they were put end to end, and so those statistics are important for making the trash wheel an effective advocate for additional changes rather than just technological changes. And we get those numbers by sampling what's coming up the conveyor and generating a scientific estimate of how much is going into the dumpster. And periodically, I'm going to let Adam speak to this as well, we have volunteers go through an entire dumpster and count every single item that's in that dumpster. And it's amazing how many people are willing to do that job, because it's not a very pretty job, and that sort of confirms our methodology for sampling. And I think those numbers that we generate are pretty darn accurate, if not a little understated.
Yep, since day one, I thought it was really important to collect the data on the trash we were collecting. So it's actually, if you go to mrtrashwheel.com, you can download an Excel spreadsheet that has every single dumpster we've ever pulled out of the harbor, alongside an estimate of all the different types of trash: cigarette butts, foam containers, plastic bottles, plastic bags, even sports balls are all included in that spreadsheet. And that's because, as John said, that's been really valuable information. I think it's one of the strongest data sets out there in terms of what kind of plastic is ending up in our waterways and ending up in our ocean from urban sources.
The estimates we were given for how much trash comes down the river ended up being an actual fraction of what's actually coming down the river. So the prototype was, to a certain extent, not designed to have the capacity that it needed. But when we started stopping and collecting and picking up all the trash, we realized there's a heck of a lot more than anybody ever thought coming down this river. And we need to upgrade the capacity and the power to deal with it.
What's the craziest thing he's ever picked up?
Oh, I mean, I think the craziest thing for me, personally, as a musician myself, would be an acoustic guitar that came down the river. And, it was very waterlogged, but I actually took it home and dried it out for 2 years. And it eventually became playable. So now I have a guitar that was eaten by Mr. Trash Wheel at my house that I can play, which is pretty ridiculous.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we 90% of the stuff that we see coming down that river and collect is the same thing that we saw the last storm. It's plastic bottles, styrofoam cups, cigarette butts, chip bags, that kind of stuff. So in general, there's not, it's all the same stuff, and it's the same stuff we see in Panama and California and all over the world. We do get an occasional interesting item that comes up. We picked up a kayak at one point, a couple of beer kegs. We don't get many live animals coming down. We get some dead animals coming down. One time we had somebody's pet python snake, which is a land snake, must have gotten into a storm drain, escaped and gotten into a storm drain and got washed down the river and came down the river, and the first place it could find to get out of the water was on the trash wheel, and it came up the conveyor, crawled off the conveyor, and on top of our solar charge controller, which is the warmest place on the machine. And we saw the snake on the cameras that we use to monitor the machine as it's working. And we saw it get off the thing, and the next day we were wondering if that snake was still on there, and sure enough, we found it. And the National Aquarium, we didn't know what kind of snake it was. We're not snake people, but the National Aquarium sent over their reptile expert and quickly identified it as a ball python snake, which is I guess it's native to Africa. Is that right, Adam?
Native to West Africa, yep. And it was a slow news day in Baltimore, we learned, because that night, like every TV station in the city went live from Mr. Trash Wheel with the ball python. So if there's one thing the people of Baltimore remember about Mr. Trash Wheel, it seems to be they know about that time he picked up a python out of the harbor.
And the Mr. Trash Wheel's beer.
I feel like we're getting way bring up the beer, but it's true. There's now a Mr. Trash Wheel Lost Python Ale, which is a craft beer made by Peabody Heights, a local brewery that now supports Trash Wheel operations.
That's amazing. I love that. And I know that, like you guys talked about, each one has its own personality, and you have to tell us a little bit about the social media frenzy around Mr. Trash Wheel and how that started. And Adam, I saw your video on YouTube. Did it really start with one little video? Please tell us that story too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. So we were always, I think, one of the challenges that we've had with cleaning up the Baltimore Harbor is that the people of Baltimore feel very disconnected from their waterway. So we've always looked at projects and said, how can we use these to be engaging? Like when we build floating wetlands, we get students from local schools to come help us build them and plant them. We actually are growing a couple 100,000 oysters in the Baltimore Harbor right now, and it's a huge volunteer program where volunteers come and take care of the baby oysters that we're growing in the harbor. So when we installed this massive trash interceptor, I think that was an interesting and unique challenge for me to figure out how can we make this engaging to the public. And kind of ironically, this trash interceptor has become by far our most engaging project. But at the time, that wasn't immediately obvious. So I think it had been installed for about a week. We did do a ribbon cutting, and some media had come out to the ribbon cutting when we first unveiled the device. But it wasn't until about a week later we had our first rainstorm, and I went out there with my phone, and I had been on my social media a lot, just talking up this device, sharing pictures of its construction, and I just had friends and relatives who didn't really, who hadn't yet fully understood what this device was. So I just did a quick little 2-minute video that was so amateur that I wouldn't even thought about putting it up on like our corporate, or our nonprofit webpage or nonprofit YouTube channel. Like I just shot a quick video explaining how the thing works. It was kind of exciting. We were picking up our first tire out of the river, and so I shot that video, put it up on YouTube. And what happened is the website reddit.com picked it up, and over the course of a weekend, it received well over 1 million views. And so that was kind of shocking to us. It actually went to number 1 on reddit.com. So that was the first time that we were like, wow, yeah, we were like, this is something that people are really intrigued by. And we suddenly were faced with this kind of unique conundrum where it was exciting as a nonprofit to have a video go viral and have all of a sudden this huge audience that's excited, but how do you capture that audience? How do you build on it? Where do you go from having the viral video? And thankfully, we live in a very creative city here in Baltimore, so we actually invited creative firms, marketing firms, to pitch ideas to us about how we could build on the viral success of that first video. And it was a firm called What Works that came to us and said, what you guys need to do is we'll take a picture of the trash wheel, we'll Photoshop on googly-eyed, and we'll give it a Twitter account and let it have its own voice. And, we're a nonprofit. We don't have a huge amount of money to put into marketing efforts. So starting a Twitter account, which is free, sounded, very very doable and approachable to us. So that was the direction we went. And I think it took we spent 2 years just building up that Twitter account before people started really calling it Mr. Trash Wheel. And then there was an online petition asking us to install real giant googly eyes on the contraption so that it would match the Photoshop Twitter icon that we've been using. And since then, obviously, Mr. Trash Wheel has expanded into Instagram and onto Facebook. And now he's got over 55,000 followers across these different platforms. And, we had to define what his personality was like. And we decided that he was going to be kind of super positive. So he's not somebody who ever gets depressed or sad about the problem of litter. He's got a very can-do attitude. He's excited to pick up trash. He's excited to really celebrate pop culture and dive into memes. And I really feel like when we started this back in 2014, we were one of the first nonprofits to really fully embrace this internet meme culture. I think now you see everybody doing it, but I think Mr. Trash Wheel is really on the cutting edge of that, which is something that I'm really proud of.
Oh, you should be, because he really is a sensation. And I know, being on the Waste 360 and Waste Expo side, we've followed him, and it's been fantastic. And I really got a kick out of when he ate his own beer can. That was awesome.
So that was technically Professor Trash Wheel. We talk about so if Mr. Trash Wheel is the nerdy, excitable jokester Trash Wheel, Professor Trash Wheel is kind of, we call her like a hybrid of like Eleanor Roosevelt and Beyonce. And she's much more interested in science and education. And when we pull out dumpsters for our what we call the dumpster dive events, which John referenced earlier, those are the events where we pull a dumpster out of the harbor, and volunteers, 100 to 200 volunteers, will give up their Saturday morning to dig through a dumpster of wet, smelly trash from the harbor, which I'm always amazed by. But it takes us about 4 hours, and we sort and count every piece of trash in that dumpster. And that's actually when we found a Mr. Trash Wheel beer can, which was, certainly we think it was, the beer can had been crushed in a way that indicated to us that maybe someone intended to recycle it, and perhaps there had been some wind, and that might be how the beer can ended up getting into a storm drain. That's a story we like to believe, and not that someone would drink an environmentally focused beer and then throw the can on the ground.
No, I think you're right. It definitely made its way there by accident.
One thing I want to mention is that the trash wheels there's just been a tremendous amount of community support for the trash wheels, but the Maryland Port Administration, more than anybody else, has been a huge supporter of these projects. The Maryland Port Administration, of course, has to dredge waterways to keep the Port of Baltimore open to shipping traffic from around the world. And there's an environmental impact of that dredging that they need to mitigate. And one of the ways they can mitigate that impact is by funding environmental projects. And they were a huge funder of Mr. Trash Wheel and Professor Trash Wheel. And then they actually bought Captain Trash Wheel all on their own. So Captain Trash Wheel is wholly owned by the Maryland Port Administration. So they've just been a huge, huge funding partner, and I think it's important to mention that.
Definitely. With each iteration, has Mr. Trash Wheel changed at all, or are you sticking with the same simple yet very effective technology?
We're always looking to improve on the trash wheel design, and the concept has remained consistent. We really believe that using the water wheel and the system, that the basic concept of the system is a great way to do this. It's been extremely successful. It's been very durable. It's been user-friendly to operate and maintain. That said, we're constantly looking at ways to make improvements. Third trash wheel, Captain Trash Wheel, has the water wheel itself has changed on each one, and that the Captain Trash Wheel design for the water wheel, we feel, has been a big improvement over earlier versions. Water wheels have been around for centuries, but we're actually doing something that most people, that hasn't been done that much, and that is we're using it. Water wheels are classified as undershot, midshot, or overshot wheels, and depending on where the water comes in. So in a lot of the mills, they had a sluiceway that dumped it on the top of the wheel. Sometimes they used the flow of the river and just to paddle the wheel through the water. That's an undershot wheel. The overshot wheel dumps it on the top of the wheel. We're actually doing both. So we have kind of a hybrid wheel. The flow of the rivers was turning it as an undershot wheel. The pumps are dumping it at the top and turning it as an overshot wheel. So that's not a very common thing to see. Most water wheels have always been one or the other. So we're using it as two. And we've finally sort of developed a design for the wheel that we feel like is giving us a lot of efficiency in both applications, and Captain Trash Wheel has that. The other ones are very effective, but Captain Trash Wheel has sort of taken it to a better place as far as efficiency goes. And there's a lot of minor tweaks that we do as far as we've tried different conveyor bed surfacing to try to, the conveyor likewise. Most conveyors are designed to handle one type of material, whether it be, sand and gravel or, apples or grain or whatever. We get everything from big logs to cigarette butts, and we even can pick up oil that comes down the river. The trash wheels are the conveyors are kind of are unique in that way, that they're picking up everything from weighing fractions of an ounce to thousands of pounds. So the conveyor has to be a kind of unique design, and we've been working on that as well, on making some design tweaks to it as we go from generation to generation. But we're very pleased with the function of it. Mr. Trash Wheel's still my favorite trash wheel. It was the first one. But but we're definitely making some improvements as we go along.
We're in the process or John is in the process now of building Baltimore's fourth trash wheel, which will be placed at another large stream in the city. And it'll be the largest trash wheel that we've ever built.
Oh, wow.
The biggest, strongest, fastest trash wheel we've ever built.
Yeah. And then, of course, we have to assign a new personality and name to it, which is the silly side that I get to work on. So we've actually opened it up to people to suggest names for this new trash wheel, and we've received almost 4,000 name suggestions. And now our job is to pare that down to maybe our top 4 names, and we're going to let people vote on what the final name should be.
I like to say that we make it eat, and Adam makes it see and talk and have a personality. We make it eat.
Oh, that's a great distribution right there. I like that. Now, it sounds like you're already working with other cities to bring Mr. Trash Wheel or the like to their cities. Can you talk a little bit more about that? I can't imagine that you would have. I would think many cities would be calling you to figure this out because it is so successful.
We've been contacted by over 100 countries. So we've been contacted by cities around the world and around the country. When I first started this project, I thought, we're going to clean up Baltimore Harbor. That was my goal. And quickly after Adam's video went viral, we've discovered that Baltimore is definitely not unique and not even really as bad as many places as far as the problem of trash in the waterways. Since then, I've been to many places that make Baltimore's rivers look almost pristine in comparison. Places like Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and Indonesia, and places like that, the problem is even much more pronounced. So there's lots of places around the world that could use trash wheels, and there's lots of places that are where people are interested in this technology, and we're developing ways to get them, to help them with those projects. Our next projects are going to be one more for Baltimore, and then we're working in Panama City, Panama, which will be our first international project that's actually implemented. We've had lots of them in the design development stage, but there's picking up. There's a lot. These projects are complicated in a way. I mean, they're simple in concept. We're going to pick up the trash and get rid of it out of the waterway, but you've got to figure out, as soon as you get a trash wheel, you own a lot of trash, and you got to figure out what to do with the trash and how to operate it and who's going to own it and what permits are required. So it's a little more to it than just, send us a trash wheel and we'll start picking up the trash. So a lot of these projects take a lot more time than you'd expect, but there's projects moving in a lot of different places, cities here in the United States and around the world as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really almost every week I hear from very well-intentioned people who email me or call me and say, got to get a trash wheel in my city. But they haven't fully thought through what it means to intercept trash, which, as John just alluded to, once you collect the trash, you own the trash, and you need to you're then responsible for disposal of the trash. And there's a whole, long-term cost associated with doing that. And I would give Baltimore City a lot of credit for actually stepping up, because I see this time and time again, cities not want to take responsibility for the trash in their waterways. They're perfectly content to, say once the trash is in the river, it's going downstream, it's somebody else's problem. Now, Baltimore, for a variety of reasons, one being that they actually have a legal requirement, which is known as a trash TMDL, which is a legal requirement for them to remove a certain amount of trash from their waterways. So that was certainly motivating. But they still didn't have to buy in as fully to the trash wheel technology, I think, as they did. So I give Baltimore a lot of credit for stepping forward for stepping up and saying, we're not going to just let our trash flow into the Chesapeake Bay. We're going to collect it and continue to fund the removal and proper disposal of the litter that's in our waterways.
Yeah, the status quo around in most places around the world is not a very good situation. But one thing you can say about it is it's cheap and easy, and what that is, let it go downstream and become somebody else's problem or the ocean's problem. And overcoming the ease of inaction against taking ownership is something that takes a while to get. It takes a commitment for an organization or a city or a government agency to say, yes, this is something we want to do, and take responsibility for all the phases of and all the responsibilities that entails.
And obviously, I'm the world's biggest fan of Trash Wheels and Mr. Trash Wheel. I think it's a really well done and well implemented technology. But the sad truth is that there's so much plastic in our waterways that that anything you put out there is gonna start collecting trash. Any kind of interceptor, any type of technology. And so I think that the power of Mr. Trash Wheel and what he brings to the table is not just cleaning up the river, but this really important engagement piece, because what we focus on with Mr. Trash Wheel is behavior change. And he's actually, we use these dumpster dives where we count every single foam container, for example, and we take these pictures of these mountains of foam containers that we pulled out of the river, and then we show them to our politicians, we show them to our elected representatives, and it really helps them understand the problem in a really tangible way. And Baltimore City in 2018 banned foam containers with help from many different organizations working on that. But certainly the data and photos provided by Mr. Trash Wheel were a big part of that. And then Maryland went on to become the first state in the country to ban styrofoam containers. And that ban goes into effect July 1st. So, we're really proud that we're not just treating a symptom here, we're also treating the disease, which is our reliance on single-use plastic.
Absolutely. And do you think that will hold true for plastic bags as well?
We have helped the city ban plastic bags. The mayor signed that into law in January. We were so close to helping the state to ban plastic bags across Maryland. Unfortunately, a little thing called the coronavirus came in, and they actually ended legislative session early. So we were unable to get that legislation passed at the state level. But we're hopeful that that next legislative session we're going to try again.
Good luck. And so do you think that beyond the legislative side, do you think Mr. Trash Wheel and company, do you think they've inspired residents to be more mindful of their own habits and actually change their behavior?
Oh, I know it has. I mean, we've had people tell us that they didn't even, I've had someone tell me that they didn't even think about their waste stream before. They didn't think about how their trash was being disposed of. They didn't even recycle. But then we did a Mr. Trash Wheel Ask Me Anything on Reddit, where people can just type in and ask Mr. Trash Wheel questions, and we have a lot of fun answering them and being very silly and doing on the fly like comic strip and Photoshop things. But someone came up to me once and said that after engaging with Mr. Trash Wheel in that way, they actually started recycling for the first time in their life, just because of how funny and inspiring Mr. Trash Wheel was. There's a secret society of Trash Wheel fans in Baltimore called the Order of the Wheel, and so every spring we have this opportunity for residents of Baltimore to pledge to become members of our secret society. And in order to be accepted into the society, they must complete 5 challenges, all related to cleaning up the environment, to learning more about environmental issues in the city. And if they complete all 5 of those tasks, they get to join our secret order, which I think has about 4,000 members.
Wow, that's amazing. The viral aspect of this is just astonishing. I love it.
Thank you. We have a lot of fun with it. It gives us an opportunity to be very creative and very silly, which is just a really great thing to be able to incorporate into your everyday work.
Yeah, when I first came up with this idea, I never in my wildest dreams thought that it would come, have this kind of following and this sort of viral aspect. I thought the best thing that could come from biggest reward I could get from this project would be looking out in the harbor and seeing a much cleaner harbor. But now I see, Lego leagues and where kids are working on their own trash cleaning devices and kids having lemonade stands to fund the next trash wheel and things like the Order of the Wheel and everybody getting, excited about becoming part of the solution is just incredibly rewarding and I would say just as rewarding as looking out and seeing a lot less trash in the harbor.
Oh, I bet. It's what a reward and what a legacy for both of you, really. And so he's been working his magic for a while. Is the harbor as clean as you hoped it would be by now? Can you fish? Can you swim? Are you almost there?
Well, that's a great question, an important question, since we set a goal of making the harbor safe for swimming and fishing by 2020, and it is now 2020. And I am pleased to report that we have seen some tremendous improvement in water quality in the Baltimore Harbor. Of course, trash is just one component of that, and we do see a lot less trash. And not just because of Mr. Trash Wheel and Professor. The trash wheels are a big part of keeping the litter out of our waterways, but the city has also stepped up and expanded street sweeping. The city's launched a municipal trash can program, so now every household in Baltimore has a trash can, and all of this is combined to mean that there is far less litter in the harbor now than there was when we started. Mr. Trash Wheel, after a single rainstorm, and I don't think we haven't touched on this, but about 90% of the trash collected by Mr. Trash Wheel is rain-driven. So if it's not raining, we're not picking up a whole lot of trash. But when there's a big storm that's come through the city, Mr. Trash Wheel's picked up 15 dumpsters of trash after a single rainstorm. So, if you can try and imagine what 15 dumpsters spread out across the water would look like. I mean, it used to look like you could walk across the harbor on these islands and mats of trash, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Great. That's huge progress.
Absolutely. And we are actually hoping we're aiming to host a swim event in the Baltimore Harbor in the summer of 2021.
And the harbor is full of life as far as the fishable component on that. It's kind of amazing when you look in the harbor, and particularly the trash wheel. One of the things it does when we're pumping the water and turning the wheel is it puts oxygen into the water. And when the rest of the harbor is low on oxygen in the hot summer on a hot summer day, the fish and other aquatic life will gather around the oxygen-rich area, which is near the water wheel, and it's amazing to see the number and variety of marine life that's in the harbor. So there's lots of life in the harbor, in spite of the fact that the perception is that it's a dead zone. That's not really true. Incredible amount of life. And one of the nice things about the trash wheel is it operates. It can pick up a lot of trash at a time, but it does it slowly, so we don't end up picking up live fish or other marine life from the water. A lot of people get concerned about that, but the fish quickly realize that the water's drying up underneath them as they're getting on the conveyor, and they just swim off. So we don't see fish, live animals going into our dumpster, which was part of the design, was to make sure that doesn't happen.
That's great. And then has anyone ever reached out to you, and I know it's its own little zone, but to help clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch?
Well, that's, in my opinion, we've really got to focus on, stopping the flow of trash into the ocean, getting it out of the ocean. It's challenging enough to get it at the mouth of a river flowing into a harbor. It's extremely harsh environment and extremely challenging and somewhat expensive because you've got to build equipment that's up to that challenge, and then you need to push transport the dumpsters from water and transfer them onto land, and then take them by land to the disposal facility. And when you try to do that out in the middle of the ocean, 2,000, those costs go up exponentially, and your capture rate goes down because most of the trash does not end up in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. That's a lot of trash does, but most of it ends up other places in the ocean, whether it sinks or ends up on a beach or somewhere else. So that's kind of, in my mind, it's a little too late once you're to get it once you're out in the middle of the ocean. You've got to stop it. And, the big problem is that it's not stopping. It just keeps coming every year, every day. And more and more trash is dumping into our ocean. So if we could, turn off that flow, we'll be way ahead. And then we should start maybe think about what we can do about the stuff that's the legacy stuff that's out in the ocean. But until we you don't, start mopping your floor while your tub's still overflowing.
Makes sense. And then, Adam, anything that you're working on from the voice perspective, other than naming the fourth one? Is any other fun campaigns planned that we can look forward to?
Right now, Mr. Trash Wheel is really focusing on social distancing and talking about, how his moorings keep him 50 feet away from all human beings, and how he encourages, people should be more like Mr. Trash Wheel right now.
That's great advice.
But yeah, other than that, I think one thing that we have coming up this fall is Mr. Trash Wheel Fan Fest is a really great time. So local artists have created such amazing artwork depicting Mr. Trash Wheel, stained glass windows, paintings, cakes, and pies in the shape of Mr. Trash Wheel. And so we have this one event every year where these artists all come together and they sell their Mr. Trash Wheel themed artwork at a big fundraising event for our organization. And so we're always looking forward to that because we just get some amazing, zany, weird stuff from some very passionate fans.
Oh, that's fantastic. You'll have to keep us posted on when that is. Maybe we could come down and cover it. So is there anything else you guys want to share? Because I'm trying to be respectful of your time. It's almost an hour. Is anything you wish I had asked or anything you want to share with our audience?
I'm good. I think it's been a great conversation, and you hit on all the key points of the projects that we're working on. And I'd just like to say it's been, working with Adam and the Waterfront Partnership and the Healthy Harbor Initiative has been, just a tremendous partnership for us. It's a great working arrangement, and they're able to complement what we do in ways that we never could. So we're thrilled with that.
Oh, thank you, John. We like working with you too. Obviously, all of this is built on the back of John's incredible invention and the passion of John, and his ability to really get the city to buy into this technology and believe in it. So thank you, John, for really your visionary leadership on this topic too.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Your collaboration is so impressive, and the fact that you went from invention to execution and then taking it to the next level for the engagement, and the fact that you really are seeing tremendous awareness now in Baltimore and surrounding areas. It's just very impressive. So I just want to thank you both for your time today, but also applaud you both for the great work you're doing with Mr. Trash Wheel and his cousins, because it really is a huge inspiration to all of us in this industry. So thank you.
And thanks for having us. This has been a great conversation, and very glad to be a part of it.
And as Mr. Trash Wheel would say, keep it wheel.
I love it. Thank you both. And please stay well, and we'll continue to follow all of this and Mr. Trash Wheel and friends as you keep rolling on and keeping it wheel. So thank you.
Likewise, stay well.
Yep.